what's happening? In other words, we see this, it almost seems like it's just exploding to our view. All of these unfortunate things that are occurring. Did God foresee that? Did He know that this would happen? Let me read you a statement here. And this is from Manuscript Releases, Volume 20, page 122. 20 MR 122. The use of poisonous drugs is coming more and more into practice among our people. But God's ways and instructions have not been heeded. Therefore, not 1/20th part of the good has been accomplished, which might have been if Christian physicians had heeded the admonitions and the counsels of the Most High. So we simply didn't follow the Lord in this. New England Journal of Medicine, January 7, 1999. How many here are familiar with the New England Journal of Medicine? It's a fairly prestigious medical journal. Prescription drugs are the fastest growing component of personal health care expenditures, amounting to $78 billion in this country in 1997. That's the fastest rising component of personal health cost is prescription drugs. Okay. The rate of consumption is growing, this is according to this article, at an ever-increasing rate. Now remember, this is over 10 years ago now. In 1995, spending for prescription drugs grew by 10.6%. 1996, it grew by 13.2%. 1997, the growth was 14.1%. Every year, an increasing amount of prescription drugs. I was reading an article, and this was some years ago, probably several years ago, about antidepressants. Never has there been such an explosion of the use of these drugs. And it's so interesting to me that now, as we've used them more and more and the prescriptions are being written more and more, you find the problems with them. So now that every class of antidepressant medication has on it, labeled by the FDA, a black box warning. Black box. That means that's the most serious possibilities. Increased risk of suicide for antidepressants. Now that, you know, if you told a child that, here, I'm going to give you something because you're depressed, and the major side effect, you'd become where you wanted to commit suicide, that wouldn't sound right, would it? But you remember Genesis 3, the serpent is more subtle than any other beast of the field. Okay, more subtle. So what is God's response to all this? This quote is from Medical Ministry, page 24. And I believe that this is a call for you and me in the medical missionary work. I'm instructed to say that God will have the medical missionary work cleansed from the tarnish of earthliness and elevated to stand in its true position before the world. You remember in Deuteronomy 28, if we followed the Lord's instruction, kept His commandments, God's promise was we would be the what? The head and not the tail. But unfortunately, the serpent has been working so to make us sometimes feel like it's the world that has the knowledge, and we've got to go to the world to find out what they're doing. And when we are training our young people according to the customs, the practices, the traditions, and the education of the world, they come back and bring that back, and it leavens the church, you see? Rather than the world coming to us like Deuteronomy 4 and saying, my, what a wise and understanding people this church is. Who's God? Where did you get such instruction, you see? And so you can see how things have changed. And God wants to change this. This church is to become the object lesson of the universe. So He wants it cleansed from the tarnish of earthliness to stand in its true position before the world. When schemes that imperil souls are brought into connection with this work, its influence is destroyed. This is why there has arisen in the carrying forward of medical missionary work many perplexities that now demand our careful consideration. Okay? Demand it. I mean, we cannot just watch this going on and not make some kind of response if we really have a heart like Jesus' heart that bleeds for the suffering of human souls. And when we see people being ruthlessly treated with this and that, and I see it every day. And you see, physicians, since we're not trained this way, we don't see with eyes that are anointed. We have a patient come to us, we put them on a drug for a particular problem, and they seem to get better. Can I give you an example? I just got out of not medical school, but internal medicine training, took my boards, and I just knew that I knew everything, right? I mean, I had gone through some of the best schools, and I mean, I was ready. There wasn't a disease that I didn't know how to treat. And I was a young physician and in practice in Atlanta, and a little elderly lady came in there. She hobbles in, you know, with rheumatoid arthritis. And she wanted to know if I could help her. Well, I didn't even know the Lord then either. Can I help you? Of course I can help you. You know, I know it all. So I got my prescription pad out, wrote out those magic drugs, you know, sent her home. So she comes back, and I don't know, I followed up with her in a few weeks or whatever. She came back in, a little spry. How you feeling, Mary? Oh, listen, I'm feeling a lot better. My arthritis, you know, it's not so bad, feels pretty good. Wonderful. Well, I knew it anyway, you know. And, but before she left, she told me, she said, you know, there is one thing, though. My stomach doesn't feel so good. Well, it's no problem. Get another prescription, sure. We know these things irritate the stomach, so write out another prescription. Now, at that time, back in the 70s, you know, we didn't have all these new omeprazole and all these proton pump inhibitors and all that. So I probably, as best I can recall, you know, told her to take the pill with food and not to take it on an empty stomach. And this went on over some time, and each time I would see her, her arthritis was fine, but her stomach was getting worse and worse. And I would prescribe antacids to take with the pills and so forth. And finally, but I never stopped the drug because her arthritis was so much better. I was in the hospital one weekend. They called me. I was up on the floor. Dr. Grievous, one of your patients is here in the emergency room. You better come down here. She looks pretty sick. And I walked down there, and there was Mary. She was lying on a cart, you know, one of those emergency room carts, writhing in abdominal pain. So I got some x-rays on her, and I took one look at those x-rays, and I knew we were in problems. She had free air up under the diaphragms, which means she had perforated, you know, her gastrointestinal tract. Well, I called a surgeon, and fortunately, and Mary was an older lady at that point.